Hello folks, as Kenzi's alluded to, my name's James and I'm here from Fife College today, and if you bear with me for a moment in a very traditional teaching online moment, I'm going to try and share my screen with you, but there's so many people online that I've lost the share screen button. Here we go. Cool. So again, as Kenzie alluded to, I'm here today to speak to the team or everyone that's here about gamification. I've got a bit of a showcase. I'm initially going to start off by talking about gamification and an overview of what that principle is. I'm going to do a little bit of speaking about the pedagogical underpinning and some theoretical work behind gamification. I'll then hand over to my colleague Steve, who's going to do a little bit of a kind of practical aspect and some of the back end. And I will share as well some of the evaluations and sort of reflections that we came across in our usage of the tool inside Moodle. So what is gamification is probably a good place to start. And I would imagine that in a roundabout way, we've all probably encountered this in an aspect of our day-to-day life in one way or another. And it tends to look like this. It tends to look like an application on our phone or on one of our smart devices, or in some circumstances, your wearables, such as your smartwatch. It is generally some points that are being allocated to users for their engagement with any particular activity or process in whichever form it is they're using the gamification in. So we're all fairly familiar. I hope we've encountered it in some way. Some kind of more tangible examples to give some kind of flesh to this would be, you know, buy one extra coffee at McDonald's and you'll have the sixth one free, or, you know, same in Starbucks, for Fitbit, for Apple products or an Apple Watch, this may be, have you done all your steps for today? Have you climbed enough set of stairs? For Uber, there may be an incentive to, you know, rate your driver or your delivery person in that circumstance. And the same with, you know, Snapchat. Have you continued your streak for the past, you know, X many days? And Strava would be, would you like to share your run and support one of the other colleagues that you're working with on Strava? So we encounter these different aspects of gamification or motivation to engage with activities fairly regularly. And the principle that I'm looking at today is, how do we use this inside an education or as a learning object? So I think a good place to start with that would be, well, what's a kind of academic explanation of gamification? And to use a definitive term from Ritchie and Walsh here, we are saying that gamification involves the application of game design elements to a traditionally non-game context. So I suppose one of the questions I arrived when I was working alongside Steve on this project is, well, what's a non-game context in 2022? And for lots of us here, having a look around the room, you know, demographically, we're potentially a little bit older than some of the learners that we tend to work with, and certainly in my area, you know, FE and some HE. A non-game context can mean lots of different things. You know, for example, I'm thinking in Dundee, Scott Gov's already signed off the building of an esports arena, which, you know, may seem very foreign to some of us, given it's going to be bigger than the local football team stadium here in Dunfermline. I'm in the wrong place now. We're in Dunfermline. It's not Starks Park here, is it? What's the Dunfermline arena called? East End Stadium. I think it's still going to be bigger than East End Park anyway, to be honest with you. It's got quite a big capacity. So one of the other aspects of that, you know, question we've got up here, or definition as well, you know, what are game design elements? These tend to be, you know, user interface aspects from games, depending on the particular tool or the plugin which we're looking at today, they can look slightly different. But very basically, they're behaviorist principles that we've all used in our educational role for a long time. They're not new or emergent things. We have done some of these things, you know, since we started educating and teaching. These can be as simple as a bit of feedback as well done on a learner's piece of work, or, you know, thinking all the way back to primary school here, a stamp on your jotter that says, you know, happy face or a smile. They're just motivational aspects of encouragement, and gamification looks to utilize some of these principles of reinforcers and pull them into generally the VLE that we're looking at today. iPad's gone off, there we go. So why are we using them in education? Well, we're not here to sell people an extra coffee or to, you know, have them share their run or how many steps they've done on a day-to-day basis. We tend to be using gamification to motivate our learners to engage with the activities that we create for them, whether they're kind of formative or summative along the way. We're trying to use this tool or this principle to say, here's this pat on the back for engaging, a theme which me and Steve established fairly early on in this, and we'll come back to that as to how the points are allocated. It's about engagement, not about achievement for gamification. So briefly, a little bit of theoretical work here behind gamification and how it works. The gamification process tends to jump on the back of this cyclic process here, which is, like I've just alluded to, we're looking to motivate our learners to engage with the materials that we create from them in this cyclic manner. The more that they are motivated, hopefully the more they'll engage with the increasing number of activities and learning objects that we provide for them. Ultimately, the goal there is to facilitate learning and achievement on their course, whether that's in a formal setting like college or, as Kenji alluded to, we've got some people from the third sector here as well. And where gamification takes place is quite specifically in here. It's a tool to try and utilize and enhance the motivational aspect to get people to engage more. So that tends to work, or one of the most common explanations that we've got for why this motivation works so well, when it does, I suppose, is through self-determination theory. It does share many aspects with, there's probably 4 or 5 other well-established theories for gamification, but they all tend to share the same component parts, and that ultimately comes down to what's called intrinsic motivation, which I'll come back to in a second. But other theories which share similarity here are things like optimal flow state. Probably heard about it in the past 4 or 5 years. I would imagine we're getting into the right mindset to engage with particular materials or tasks at hand. But self-determination theory and many of these other kind of mostly positivist psychology theories tend to rely on motivation, and very specifically intrinsic motivation. So the 3 kind of main factors that feed into and impact the user's motivation or scale of motivation would be the autonomy. And the autonomy is the learner's perceived locus of control. Do they believe that themselves that they have chosen to engage with the particular material that we're looking at, and have they achieved that themselves? Are they, motivated to do it on their own behalf, or have they been forced or shoehorned into doing so? We tend to work in the college demographic, or an FE with an HE as well, with a high amount of autonomous learners. We are dealing with people who've chosen to come here, chosen to enroll in the particular course at hand, and thus a lot of our users do have a high level of autonomy. So this works particularly well. The next most kind of useful aspect of this is competence, and competence relates directly to the kind of tasks or the activities that we're asking our users to engage with. How well are they getting on with these tasks? Are they achieving them? Are they completing them to a high degree of competency? And the final sort of aspect that feeds into motivation here is relatedness. And this is very much a social aspect of where do I sit as a learner in relativity to the other learners in my cohort? Where am I in the sort of league table of things? Am I sort of in the middle? Am I at the top doing well? Or perhaps am I at the bottom? And it's a combination of these things that tie together to increase motivation. So plainly, if I'm a learner and I anticipate that I've engaged with these materials off my own back, I've chosen to do so through my kind of locus of control, I believe I've done it myself. And in terms of my competency, I've done fairly well in engaging with this task. And lastly, that I can understand my relative position or social rank in comparison to other users in the group, that I will be quite motivated to continue to engage with the different activities or materials that my educator has provided me with. So gamification, or I think more specifically the tool that we're looking at today and we've used as part of Moodle, it comes directly in here. It sits in between the autonomy and the competence, and in between the competency and the relatedness. And the 2 main aspects of the tool, which is level up, which I'm going to, hopefully Steve will display in a minute, is it relies mostly on points and it relies on leaderboards. So points are directly related to individual users. They're allocated based on their ability to engage autonomously with different activities and tasks, and to some degree, how competent they are within those tasks. But we've certainly leaned more heavily into the autonomy aspect. And the leaderboards is a ranked score system, and we've very ethically had to come across 2 different ways to test this tool out. But very generally, it displays a user's social ranking in terms of where they are in their competency and their point scoring in relativity to the class. But we'll kind of hone in on this in a second. We did it in 2 different ways. So myself and Steve spent, I think, the better part of about 8 months working on this project. And we spent a lot of time at the start doing a lot of planning, and we kind of put together a process here of how best to use this if anybody else was looking to perhaps implement this tool. So there was a lot of time spent with planning. We actually deployed this on one of my own courses, which was a level 6 psychology course, or actually 3 when we get to how it was implemented in a minute. But everyone was doing the same course. So doing level 6 psychology, which is kind of SEQF level 6, equivalent to a higher as part of an FE program at Fife College. We already had, I would say, about 95% of the planned activities on the pre-existing Moodle course, and we had to determine which of those were going to be continued for use and where they sat, and really get to grips with organising this quite complex Moodle page. I think we were looking at in excess of probably 80 activities, potentially more, a combination of video lectures, formative assessments, summative assessments, ad hoc kind of articles to read, and a range of other kind of group activities as well. So once we'd got to the point where we had all the activities that we were going to use and we had a solid base, we moved on to assigning values. So once we had them all, we had to determine, well, which of these activities or objects that we have in the VLE have the most value and which have the least? Which are we going to assign the highest number of points to, and which one will the user achieve a lower number of points for engaging with? That was quite a complex process because, again, we were really trying to go from this from a perspective of we weren't allocating points in terms of competency of, well, did you get an A for that piece of work? You can have more points than someone else. We were only looking to motivate individuals to continue to engage with the remaining activities at hand. So it was about which activities were going to, I suppose, further that process of engagement. Once we decided on a kind of ranked value across 3 separate units, I believe, for the course, we moved on to making some rules. These generally take the form of a Boolean rule set, which have got some strange caveats in themselves that I'll let Steve describe because I get the 2 of them mixed up every time we do this. And once we'd sort of set rules for how many points are going to be allocated to each engagement with a particular activity, we started to have a look at the structural design of the course. So the way we evaluated it was we had 3 different groups who were all doing the exact same units, and we decided we would evaluate the tool by deploying it across technically only 2 of the groups. One of them was one acted as a control group, where it was turned on in the background and the users were aware but couldn't see it on the front end. The other 2 groups were split up into the different ranked leaderboards. And I'll maybe just pull that up in a minute on Moodle when Steve's doing his part. But we had an ethical issue where on the leaderboard, we were concerned that some of the users would be able to see and identify who's at the bottom of the leaderboard and who is perhaps at the top, and that may open up an opportunity for kind of scapegoating of saying, well, we all know that so-and-so is at the bottom of the class. So we decided to turn on an anonymity guard to say that, well, users won't be able to identify each other directly, but we also still wanted to keep an aspect of the relatedness, which was related to the self-determination principle, because it was a key factor. So users in one group could see their 3 relative positions, I think. They could see 2 users above and 1 user below and know roughly where they were in the full stead of the class. And in the group setting, users had autonomy, or sort of, not autonomy, they had anonymity on 2 different levels. They could see their relative position in the class in comparison to 2 other people, but they were also randomly assorted into groups, and they could only then see their group value. So 4 groups were established, and they could see where they sat in the lay of the land in terms of how their group was performing. And the group point system was just a purely cumulative measure of what was the total number of points for all the users within one particular group. So I think it's time for Steve to come over. He's going to show. Yeah. I'm just going to come out with this. And here's your course up on the site.
Okay.
Check out for my specs as well.
Hello, I'm Steve, a colleague of James, one of the learning technologists here at Fife. So just a few slides to begin with. I'll keep this technical, I'll keep this very short. We're using Level Up, or Level Up Plus more precisely. We pay a relatively small license fee, which represents something close to a rounding error. It's $160 to license the product. And what that does is it opens up more options Level Up is available to everyone, and if you pay the $160 per site, then you get the extra things unlocked. So this is Level Up, and it's very well documented. So you'll find everything you need to know there about the plugin, certain scenarios. So yeah, thoroughly well documented for when it comes to actually technical implementation. So the plugins are in the Moodle plugin directory. Level Up XP Gamification is the main plugin. That's the one which you have the option of licensing. There are two others there, which we're putting into use right now. One is called Availability, the other is called Enrollment. The Availability plugin will allow you to selectively make activities appear and disappear based on gamification level. And the Enrollment plugin will automatically enroll a student into another course when they achieve a certain badge level within Level Up. So we're using all three plugins. So a lot of downloads, a lot of use, a lot of reviews, very well maintained. It was very early to Moodle 4, so we've had a very easy task bringing Level Up into our Moodle 4 upgrade. What it does is it becomes a block called Level Up XP, which sits on your course, and you just add it as a block. And because we are using the enrollment option, it will also create an enrollment method called Level Enrollment. And we attach that enrollment method to the course. And in this case, I've configured it to say once a student has achieved level 2 or greater in the SMUG gamification demo course, then they're going to be enrolled into this course. Very simple, very straightforward to use. On the availability plugin, when you're looking at the restricting access, an extra option appears called level, and this option here will simply allow you to make, in the same way as all other activities, just simply allow you to make the activity appear or disappear depending on the level that they're at. So you can have activities that disappear, but that only appear when they are new to the course, other activities that maybe only appear when they are more further advanced. So that's the sort of suite of tools which are available in Level Up. So as an example, we've got a course here. This is James's course, a copy of it. I'm logged in as a lecturer here, but what we achieve here is a block here called Level Up. There's a badge associated with the level that you're at. Because we're lecturer, we don't actually accumulate any experience points. I'll log in as a student if you want to see that a bit later on. But as a student, you'll see this. These experience points will add as you drive through the course. And actually, when you jump from badge to badge, there'll be a reward screen that comes up that says, "Congratulations, you're now psychological enthusiast," or whatever. Yeah, some such. We've got 10 badges available. So within here, I'll jump straight to the report to begin with. We've got some test students here. This is me as a lecturer logged in. And you can see here that we've got 5 students. Student 3 hasn't engaged at all. Student 4 is at badge level 1 and has achieved 21 points. 99 points to go until the next level. And we've got a very high achieving student here who's managed to achieve 640 points, which is a pretty good effort since yesterday. So this is going on behind the scenes. Level Up actually runs directly off of the events system within Moodle, so it doesn't have its own data structures, which is quite nice. So all this stuff is calculated on the fly and immediately and recalculated as we go. You've also got the ability to add bonus points. So one of the things that James does is maybe he runs a quick quiz and he'll just award a group, 100 extra or 50 extra points to this group over here, and James can go into the accounting system and give them some additional points over and above what would be available through gamification. Very quickly moving on, if we look, I won't go through all the settings, but catch me afterwards. Essentially, we have this series of grade rules. Now, this is, because we were new to this is where we sort of came unstuck during the initial implementation. We tried to get too clever with it, And then we realized we really shouldn't be too clever with this. So, and again, I can share this with the group. We've got basically a spreadsheet where we created a matrix of what points were available in what activities in which week and what the rules associated with them were. And it basically broke down into about 5 or 6 rules only. So this doesn't have to be complicated, but we had to do the complicated thing before we realized it was a lot easier than that. So essentially, this is the way it's modified. 1 point will be earned when all of these conditions are true and any of the conditions are true. Again, catch me afterwards because there's a bit of Boolean going on in here. But essentially, you're going to get a point just for visiting a resource within James's course. Within Level Up, there's a cheat guard, so you can't continually just employ a small child to keep pressing the button for you for an hour. That isn't going to work. It either is going to be a one-shot only for the points, or a certain amount of time has to elapse before you can be accredited with further points. Then we've got some more higher value reports. We've got 10 points if you take part in these activities. So these are just, actually, it's just simply selected in these combo boxes here, all pretty much self-selected. Very easy to configure, but you do need to just have your wits about you as you're going through this to make sure that your rules are set correctly. I'll cover this in more detail, maybe a separate discussion, but it looks a lot here, but what you need to remember is that James' course is, in Moodle terms, probably quite extensive. So just to let you see the context of this, James has runs for the whole year. He has sleep and dreams units, and he also has, in the second part, James will tell me in a minute what that is. Thank you. So each week that you go in here, you'll see that there's activities associated with it. But the point here is that this is quite a big course. Please don't be put off that it took us a while to get this sorted out. That really was a function about the size of the course and us not really knowing what we were doing in the very early days. But this, I honestly believe once you get your head around this, these could be quickly and very effectively added to existing courses without having to go through a whole massive rules setup. Level Up has an enormous quantity of rules. Basically, any event, virtually any event which Moodle logs, you can gamify. And the reality is we didn't want it that complicated, so we just shrunk it back to what SCORM packages we were using. Are they going to be rewarded at the entry to that, at the exit to that? Videos, are they going to be rewarded for watching the video? And are we going to do a quiz at the end to make sure they actually did watch it and understood it? So that sort of thing, that's sort of the structure that we came up with. It is a large course, therefore we have a lot of rules. Please don't be put off. I'm just about done there, James, if you want to jump back on. Sure. Please catch me afterwards. We're happy to share with you our spreadsheet that we use to do the planning for this, and some lessons learned in terms of the rules and what work best. But that's essentially what's going on beneath the surface. It's $160. I'm not a salesperson for Level Up, but it's not a large sum of money.
You should be though. You get yourself some commission. Full screen mode. So I am very quickly going to run through a couple of points of evaluation that we came through while we're doing this, and then I think it's time for me to hand over to the next presenter. So what do you think? Yeah, I'll go to full screen scene just for a laugh. So a couple of points of evaluation and reflection while we've been going through this. I think Steve's actually covered a couple of them, which is great. It'll make the process all a bit quicker. So again, I've touched on this before. Certainly from an ethical perspective, we decided that we were going to weight the points for the users here based almost entirely on their engagement with the different activities and tools that we were using, not the particular score or what the competency was based on that engagement. So these are just to help to engage users through motivation. As Steve's touched on already, that was a pretty big, kind of really complex course we were deploying it on. However, once you've got your head around the rule set, it is easy as an educator to add more activities in on the fly. You just do have to have your head around how you've structured your rules. A really useful part of gamification is that we are allowed to basically do asynchronous reinforcers. So again, traditionally, reinforcers such as well done, you've done a good job, here's a badge or here's a stamp on your work, have to take place synchronously. Gamification allows the opportunity for users to get that reinforcer asynchronously and engage in their education in a kind of personalised manner, whether it's 3 o'clock in the morning or whether they're in the classroom as well. Ethics is a whole other thing which I would rather not speak about, but we can come back to that and catch me in the group at the end if you like. And the thing that I found most interesting, which I'm very quickly going to show before we disappear, is we have put all this in place, and this is not my course. I'm just going to quickly grab one that it does have turned on with. I'm not going to display any users in here, so I don't think from a GDPR perspective. Where I am. Oops, here we go. Levels. So we created this grid matrix with all our activities and our rule sets and determined how many points a user could possibly attain on any week engaging with most of those activities. Circumstantially, we arrived very close to the standard algorithm using 10 levels, which it does calculate itself. However, something that I'm looking to investigate moving forward and further research is playing about with the algorithmic coefficient, or effectively the acceleration rate at which the system allocates points to any given user. I'm hoping to investigate the use of this change of the coefficient to do with engagement and historical data. So I am looking to basically ramp up this coefficient in the next week, because I know that the users on some of my courses perhaps won't think about coming back after the October holidays. They tend to be a bit demotivated in that space of time that they've got off. So I'm hoping to ramp it up just before they go, so they can perceive themselves to have accrued far more many points than they usually would have. And on their arrival back, I will ramp that back down. I'll let you know how I get on with that. I might run out of points very quickly if someone figures it out, cheat myself out. But yeah, I've ran over time, and if you want to catch myself or Steve about this at the end, do feel free to do so. And I'll hand over back to Kenji.